Hello and welcome. Have you ever felt trapped in a life that seemed designed to sap your spirit rather than lift it? Imagine waking each morning to the hum of conveyor belts, the drone of machines, and the weight of doubt pressing on your chest, until one spark of thought changes everything. Today, we explore success through a positive mental attitude by Napoleon Hill, a journey that begins not in boardrooms or grand stages, but in the silent chambers of the mind where our greatest victories and defeats take shape. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to BookSnap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. Carlos pressed his palm against the cool steel of the stamping press, eyes half closed against the glare of overhead lights. 30 years on the factory floor had carved deep lines into his face, each one a testament to long shifts and the monotony of repetition. Day after day, he fed raw metal into the machine, watched it emerge stamped and exacting, then stacked the pieces in neat piles, never questioning, never dreaming beyond the next task. At lunch, he sat alone on a concrete bench, peeling the plastic lid off his meager sandwich. He glanced at the men around him. Some chatted about weekend plans, others scrolled through their phones, but all wore the same hollow posture. The factory's promise of steady pay felt like a cage gilded in steel. Carlos wondered, is this all there is? One Tuesday morning, as the foreman barked orders, a suggestion slipped through the din. A supervisor mentioned an upcoming seminar on the power of positive thinking. Carlos rolled his eyes. Positivity felt like jargon from glossy magazines. Yet something in the foreman's nod, quiet but determined, stirred him. That evening, he found himself standing in a dimly lit break room, listening to a visiting speaker talk about Napoleon Hill's belief that our minds are the master weavers of both roses and thorns. The words brushed against him like a breeze stirring dust. The same mind that reinforced his exhaustion could also ignite new possibilities. Intrigued, Carlos borrowed a battered copy of Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude from the plant library. He read late into the night, each page feeling like a mirror held up to his soul. Hill wrote that every human emotion springs from one of two things, love or fear, and that our dominant thoughts shape our destiny. For Carlos, these were revolutionary ideas. What if the fatigue in his bones was matched by the fuel of purpose? What if, by choosing hopeful thoughts, he could reshape the contours of his everyday? He began with a simple experiment. Each morning, before clocking in, he stood in front of a small cracked mirror in his dingy apartment and spoke aloud 3 phrases. I am valuable. I am capable. I welcome opportunity. At first, the words felt foreign, awkward on his tongue. His reflection, a face lined by years of doubt, responded with a hesitant blink. But Carlos persisted, repeating his affirmations until the words began to seep into his bones, like water soaking into parched earth. That first day on the line, when the metal jammed and sparks flew, Carlos felt the old surge of anger and frustration rising. But before those flames could engulf him, he paused and whispered in his mind, I remain calm. I find solutions. He nudged the lever, cleared the jam, and turned to help a coworker without a single growl. His heart beat faster, not from rage, but from the surprise of his own composure. For the first time in years, the day's rumble of machinery felt less like an enemy and more like a challenge he could meet. Over the next week, Carlos wove new mental habits into his routine. During his lunch break, instead of scrolling through the evening news, he replayed moments of gratitude, a daughter's hug, the taste of his wife's cooking, the laughter of a friend. At his workbench, when fatigue pressed down, he visualized finishing the week with energy intact, picturing himself stepping off the line with a sense of accomplishment rather than relief. Each small mental victory lent him fresh resolve. His transformation did not go unnoticed. Maria, the line supervisor, approached him one afternoon and asked, Carlos, what's different about you? You're smiling more. and you're the first to volunteer when the machine jams." He shrugged, unsure how to explain that his secret was not muscle or skill, but an inner shift. Yet, as he described the morning affirmations, he saw the power of positive mental attitude come alive in her eyes. Soon, other workers joined him, hesitantly at first, then with eager curiosity, wanting to try the simple practice of framing their thoughts as tools rather than burdens. Carlos's new mindset rippled beyond the factory floor. He began to sketch plans for a weekend carpentry class he'd dreamed of teaching, collecting scrap wood from the plant's discarded pallets. He reignited his long-abandoned ambition to learn guitar, spending spare moments practicing simple chords instead of sinking into television's glow. His family noticed his renewed energy. Saturday breakfasts became lively brainstorming sessions about small home improvements and future goals. The man who once trudged through days like a ghost now moved with purpose, each thought being a brushstroke coloring his world. But the true test came when the plant faced layoffs. Rumors spread like wildfire, anxiety bristled in the air, and many colleagues slipped back into fear, imagining worst-case scenarios. Carlos felt the old stirrings of panic. Bills to pay, mouths to feed, and he faced a choice: succumb to the fear or trust in his newly forged mental tools. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and repeated his affirmations. "I am resourceful. I can adapt. I create my own opportunities." Then he gathered teammates, encouraging them to envision solutions rather than disaster. Together, they proposed cross-training programs to management, volunteering to fill roles and learn new skills. Their collective positivity not only protected jobs but earned praise from executives as a model of resilience. In the weeks that followed, the factory's atmosphere shifted. Productivity rose, error rates fell, and a spirit of collaboration blossomed. Carlos's once solitary experiment had ignited a movement. Foremen reported fewer breakdowns because teams approached maintenance with proactive care. Morale improved, and even the most cynical workers found themselves holding their own reflections in that cracked mirror and seeing a glimmer of possibility. One crisp morning, Maria handed Carlos a small plaque for services to a positive workplace. He felt a surge of pride, not in the recognition but in how far he'd traveled, from a man defined by routine despair to a beacon of hopeful transformation. He knew, though, that the journey was not over. The power of positive mental attitude was a lifelong practice, a daily choice to shape his destiny with love rather than fear. As machines hummed around him and the sun rose over the plant's smokestacks, Carlos whispered once more before the line kicked in, "I am worthy. I am strong. I create my future." And today, that future gleamed not as a distant dream, but as a series of conscious moments, each one an invitation to harness the incredible power within. Maria's hands trembled as she adjusted the easel in her tiny attic studio, staring at the blank canvas that bore the weight of her deepest longing. She had fled the conventional path to chase her dream of painting vibrant landscapes that sang with color, yet months of half-finished works left her questioning, "Do I truly want this, or am I chasing a fancy?" Doubt pooled in her chest with each unresolved brushstroke. Then, late one evening, she reread Hill's counsel. Desire is the starting point of all achievement, the first step toward riches, a spiritual power that can transform thought into reality. Mary Kay Ash once said it best, "Without a burning desire, even the purest talent flickers out." Maria realized her ambition felt lukewarm because her desire lacked fire. It was a wish, not a consuming blaze. To kindle that fire, Maria began a profound exercise. She took a charcoal pencil to the canvas and, without lifting her hand, scrawled her most fervent vision. "I will create paintings so alive that they transport souls to new worlds." The words, raw and unpolished, seared into the white expanse. She studied them until the canvas felt charged with purpose, its emptiness no longer daunting but electrified. Each morning thereafter, she returned to the studio and whispered that vision to the blank canvas, letting desire ripple through her veins. She visualized a gallery opening, the hush of anticipation, the soft gasp of first beholders, the luminescent quality of colors dancing in their eyes. In her mind's theater, she felt the warmth of applause and the deep satisfaction of knowing her art had shifted hearts. Armed with a newly blazing desire, Maria restructured her practice. She set desire sessions at dawn, 15 minutes before paint touched brush, when she sat silent, breathing deeply, and felt the heat of her own longing. She invited that burning spark to guide her palette choices. Bold cadmium reds for passion, deep ultramarines for mystery, sunlit yellows for hope. Each hue became a tributary of her desire flowing onto the canvas. Hill teaches that desire must be definite and sustained. A passing fantasy won't withstand trials. When Maria's first exhibition invitation imploded, her landlord tripled the rent on her gallery space, her desire proved its mettle. Rather than despair, she summoned that inner fire and sketched plans for a pop-up show in an abandoned warehouse. She recruited local musicians for ambiance, found friends to help build impromptu walls, and turned scarcity into raw energy. On opening night, the warehouse thrummed with life. Flecks of paint gleamed on rough wooden beams. Shadows and spotlights played across Maria's canvases like characters in her long-held vision. Visitors flowed through, drawn by the visceral intensity of color and the palpable pulse of the artist's heart woven into each stroke. One patron wept in front of a painting of a storm-swept sea, a testament to the depth of Maria's desire-transformed art. But the true test came months later, when self-doubt returned in the guise of creative block. Maria awoke one morning to find her paints dry, ideas dry as thought. She felt the old shadows creep in. Maybe I've peaked. Maybe the world's moved on. In that moment, she returned to her desire inscription on the attic's lone canvas, the bold promise she'd vowed to fulfill. She ran her fingers over the charcoal words, felt their edges still sharp, and let the original fire surge anew. Reignited, she unleashed a series of paintings exploring a dreamscape of fire and ice, dueling elements born from her molten desire to push boundaries. Critics hailed the series as her most evocative work, a testament not just to technical skill, but to the unquenchable flame at the heart of true creativity. Maria's journey reveals that desire is not a polite wish, but a roaring furnace, one that, when stoked by vivid vision and unwavering commitment, fuels every step of the creative journey. It demands clarity, know exactly what you want. It demands emotion, feel it in your bones. And it demands persistence. Return to that fire each morning, letting it light every choice, every brushstroke, every heartbeat. As you carve your own path, be it artistic, entrepreneurial, or personal, ask, what desire burns too softly in you? How can you sharpen its flame? Define it in bold strokes. Nourish it with daily rituals. And let its heat transform your smallest actions into masterpieces of purpose. Rain drummed against the grimy windows of Marcus's cramped garage-turned-workshop as he stared at the half-built drone buzzing erratically on his workbench. He'd poured every saved dollar into this prototype, the culmination of years dreaming of a device that could deliver life-saving supplies to remote villages. Yet, after a year of solitary tinkering, failure after failure left him questioning his vision. He felt both isolated and inadequate, convinced that no one could grasp the complexity or the enormity of his mission. Late one evening, as he wrestled with yet another circuit short, Marcus recalled a passage from Napoleon Hill's Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. No two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third, invisible, intangible force which may be likened to a third mind. Hill called this phenomenon the mastermind value, a creative synergy born when two or more people harmonize their ideas toward a common purpose. Marcus realized that he'd been trying to climb Everest alone, ignoring the map that lay in collective wisdom. Summoning courage, he reached out to his old college roommate, Sophia, now an aerospace engineer at a major firm, and asked if she'd spare a weekend to review his plans. She agreed, intrigued by the promise of real-world impact. On Saturday morning, Sophia arrived with blueprints, simulation software on her laptop, and an infectious energy that lit the workshop brighter than the single overhead bulb. As they huddled over the drone's schematics, Sophia's questions unlocked new perspectives. Have you considered a bio-inspired wing design for more efficient lift? What if we integrate machine learning stabilization rather than manual controls? With each query, Marcus felt his own mindset expand, possibilities unfolding like petals in the rain. Sophia's deep technical knowledge married with Marcus's passionate vision to generate ideas neither could have conceived alone. A living demonstration of the mastermind value. By Sunday afternoon, they had sketched a radically new frame. Folding carbon fiber arms inspired by origami, a compact AI module repurposed from a smartphone chip, and a modular payload bay. They tested a small-scale wing model on Sophia's portable wind tunnel, cheering as it held steady at twice the lift of his original design. The workshop echoed with laughter and high fives, moments he'd never experienced in his solitary struggles. Recognizing the power of this alliance, Marcus and Sophia formalized their collaboration. They recruited a third partner, Javier, a logistics expert who had pioneered delivery routes for humanitarian NGOs. Over steaming mugs of coffee, Javier mapped out distribution networks, identifying the countries and climates where their drone could save the most lives. The fusion of Marcus's vision, Sophia's engineering prowess, and Javier's logistical acumen forged a mastermind group that felt unstoppable. Their first joint project came swiftly, a demonstration flight over a remote valley where landslides had cut off a mountain village. Under a gray sky, the trio watched as the drone, stabilized by Sophia's code and guided by Javier's GPS routes, descended gracefully to drop a medical kit and fresh water. Villagers emerged with astonished smiles, children darting forward to retrieve the package. Marcus, Sophia, and Javier stood together, hearts pounding. A single, shared moment of triumph born from the synergy of their combined minds. Word of the successful mission spread through relief organizations, and soon the mastermind trio found themselves invited to strategy sessions with international aid agencies. Each meeting brought fresh collaborators, a materials scientist offering lightweight composites, a communications specialist building long-range controls, a data analyst mapping terrain models. The mastermind network blossomed, expanding its invisible creative force. Yet maintaining such synergy demanded more than technical meetings. Marcus instituted weekly mastermind circles, ritual gatherings in his garage where they shared not only progress reports, but personal insights, setbacks, and breakthroughs. They practiced active listening, offered unvarnished feedback tempered with positivity, and celebrated each gain with the same fervor as an invention. These circles wove trust, mutual respect, and collective ambition into the fabric of their collaboration. As months passed, the drone program scaled from prototype to production. The design matured. Longer flight times, seamless AI stabilization, intuitive user interfaces for local operators. The mastermind's force rippled outward. Villages once unreachable now received regular supplies. Medical teams gained vital data for planning. Governments explored adopting the technology for disaster relief. Throughout this journey, Marcus understood that the mastermind tool was more than a clever tactic. It was a living ecosystem of minds, each contributing a unique note to a harmonious purpose. When tech glitches threatened to derail a test run, Sophia's calm troubleshooting, Javier's logistical pivots, and Marcus's unwavering belief coalesced to surmount the obstacle. The invisible third mind, shaped by their collective positivity and commitment, became the real driving engine. In the quiet aftermath of a triumphant demonstration flight at the UN's Innovation Fair, Marcus stood backstage with Sophia and Javier. As applause washed over the auditorium, He realized that the drone was only half the achievement. The true victory lay in discovering the alchemy of shared thought. Their success had transcended individual genius to become a testament to what emerges when positive mental attitudes converge in genuine collaboration. As you pursue your own ambitions, remember that true mastery often lies not in solitary effort, but in the mastermind alliances you cultivate. Seek out kindred spirits, honor each mind's strengths, and create the sacred space where unified purpose and positivity forge inventions that change the world. Late autumn leaves swirled around Kathleen as she closed the classroom door behind her, the final echo of laughter still hanging in the air. A beloved history teacher in her small hometown, she'd spent a decade weaving past and present into stories that ignited young minds. Yet that day, tragedy struck. A devastating fire at the local museum, her students' living textbook, reduced century-old artifacts to ash. The community wept, and Kathleen felt her purpose reduced to embers. In the days that followed, students arrived at school with hollow eyes. Lessons of revolutions and renaissances felt hollow against the raw grief of loss. Kathleen, too, grappled with despair, her own ardor for teaching smothered by the choking weight of what had been destroyed. At home, she stared at her reflection, asking, "How can we inspire hope when the tapestry of our past lies in ruins?" One evening, while sorting through charred photographs of museum exhibits, Kathleen found a scorched pamphlet of success through a positive mental attitude. She flipped to Hill's chapter on turning adversity into triumph and read, "Every defeat carries within it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit." The words glowed like a beacon in her grief. Within this ruin lay a hidden opportunity to rebuild not just artifacts, but the community's spirit. The next morning, Kathleen entered her classroom with a new resolve. She slid her lesson plan aside and announced a change. Instead of regular history studies, they would embark on a legacy project. Each student would research a lost artifact, gather oral histories, sketches, letters, anything that preserved its memory. Armed with notebooks and voices of elders, they would create a living archive to honor what had been, and to breathe new life into the museum's mission. At first, students hesitated. How could they reconstruct charred relics? But as Kathleen guided them to local seniors, artisans, archivists, museum volunteers, stories poured forth. The community's founding quilts sewn by pioneer women, the first student-made telescope that once crowned the exhibit hall, the ledger of artifacts bought with pennies raised at school carnivals. These intangible treasures, preserved in memory and paper, became the seeds of triumph sown in the soil of loss. Kathleen arranged a partnership with the county library to host a pop-up exhibition of the students' tapestry. Hand-drawn maps, recorded interviews, reconstructed models from clay and cardboard. On opening night, the town gathered under the library's soft lights. Elders pointed with misty eyes to a child's watercolor of the old Native American basket, while museum staff marveled at the clay replica of a once fragile vase brought back to three-dimensional life. The exhibition hummed with collective pride, a testament to transformation born from adversity. But Kathleen's triumph didn't end there. She used the students' work to apply for emergency restoration grants, pitching not only the rebuilding of glass cases and climate controls, but the deeper renewal of community engagement. Donors, moved by the students' dedication, funded not just repairs but a traveling exhibit kit, portable displays that would carry the museum's resurrected legacy to every local school, senior center, and church hall. As the museum reopened months later, its corridors now safe and restored, it bore new wings, one entire gallery dedicated to the students' legacy project, a living testament to how positive mental attitude can transform tragedy into triumph. Kathleen stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, tears mingling with laughter as families flooded in, eager to see both their storied past and the future they had reclaimed. In the classroom that Monday, she watched her students beam as they guided younger peers through the exhibits they'd sparked into being. The tragedy that once loomed as an insurmountable gap had become the catalyst for a triumph that resonated far deeper than any artifact could. Kathleen realized that adversity, when met with unwavering positivity, can ignite new paths of purpose, forging a legacy not of loss, but of lasting renewal. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the track as young Elena stretched her legs, tightening shoelaces that felt as familiar as a childhood lullaby. Her coach hovered nearby, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp with expectation. Elena, a promising sprinter in her small-town high school, had talent in abundance. Explosive starts, smooth transitions, a fearless sprint down the home stretch. Yet at her last meet, she'd false-started and stumbled, finishing out of medals and drowning in regret. It wasn't the speed, but the lack of self-control under pressure that haunted her. She ran fast on the straightaway but raced off the blocks with impatience. The buzzing crowd, the electric tension, and her own beating heart overwhelmed her practiced technique. In those critical seconds, discipline unraveled, and with it, her confidence. That evening, Elena stumbled upon a veteran runner's worn copy of Napoleon Hill's Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. Flipping to Hill's chapter on self-discipline, she read, "Self-discipline begins with the mastery of thought. If you do not control your thoughts, you cannot control your actions." The idea crystallized her struggle. Her mind sprinted ahead of her body, tangling her steps before the race even began. Determined to translate Hill's insight into action, Elena devised a training regimen steeped in self-discipline. Each morning, before her first burst of speed, she sat in quiet meditation for 10 minutes, observing racing thoughts without judgment, mental rehearsals of the race, yes, but also calm affirmations. I start only when the gun fires. I am the master of my mind. She added a ritual at the track's edge, exactly 5 deep breaths before stepping onto the blocks, each exhale releasing tension, each inhale inviting focus. Her coach, initially skeptical of these mental drills, soon witnessed their power. On the day of her next meet, Elena approached the blocks with serene purpose. The stadium's hum felt distant as she closed her eyes, counted her breaths, and anchored her thoughts on the single command: fire drives the start. When the gun cracked, her launch was both explosive and perfectly timed. No false start, no falter. She ran as she'd trained, mind and body in precise harmony, drive and discipline intertwined, and crossed the finish line in first place. But mastery of thought alone wasn't enough. Hill emphasized that self-discipline must extend into every habit, the building blocks of character. Elena recognized that her diet, sleep, and study routines influenced her on-track discipline. She overhauled her evenings, enforcing a strict curfew to ensure 8 hours of sleep, banishing late-night phone scrolls that once frayed her mental edges. She curated pre-race meals with exacting consistency, a lean protein, complex carbs, and hydration, every ingredient a pledge to her future self's clarity. Her schoolwork, once squeezed haphazardly between workouts, found its own ritual. She dedicated 2 uninterrupted hours each evening to studies, knowing that mental discipline in the classroom sharpened her focus under the gun's pressure. Grades soared, but more importantly, she cultivated the muscles of self-control that transcended track or test: patience, perseverance, and the unwavering resolve to honor her commitments. Training shifted too. Rather than chaotic drills, she adopted precision practice, each sprint preceded by a moment of mental checklist: feet placement, arm angle, gaze forward, core engaged. She timed her sets, counted her strides, and recorded minute adjustments in a journal kept at the track's edge. Every entry was a testament to disciplined observation, accountability, and incremental improvement. As meets accumulated, Elena's self-discipline blossomed into a deep well of resilience. When injury sidelined her for several weeks, she refused to slide into discouragement. Instead, she applied her disciplined routines to rehab: daily stretching, careful nutrition, and mental visualization of her triumphant return. She studied competitors' videos, noting technique nuances, enriching her mind while her body healed. The setback became a summoned strength, proving that discipline transforms adversity into preparation. In her senior year's state championship, a crucible where champions are crowned, Elena faced the fastest field she'd ever encountered. The roar of the stadium threatened to unravel any ego unprepared for pressure. Yet, she stepped onto the track with practiced calm, her mind a sanctuary of disciplined focus. The gun fired, she exploded ahead, and each stride felt guided by the 1,000 disciplined moments that built her character. Crossing the finish line, Elena didn't just see the tape, she felt the triumph of a mind mastered and a body steered by self-control. She stood on the podium, medal around her neck, but her victory spoke of something deeper. The courage to shape thought, the dedication to forge habits, and the unwavering discipline to transform fleeting speed into lasting success. As the stadium lights dimmed, Elena returned to that quiet track edge, journal in hand. She penned her most important reflection. Self-discipline is the bridge between our desires and our achievements. With each deliberate stroke of her pen, she reaffirmed that the ultimate mastery lies not in the external accolades, but in the inner architecture of disciplined thought and action, from the hush before the gun to the final exhale on the home stretch. George's hands trembled as he folded the final pamphlet for the community tech workshop, his last mission before retiring from a distinguished 40-year career as an electrical engineer. He had designed power grids, supervised cutting-edge research, and mentored countless young engineers. Yet, as the date of his formal retirement approached, he felt a quiet emptiness. After decades of building systems and structures, what would remain of his legacy once he stepped away from the labs and offices? One evening, poring over a well-worn copy of Napoleon Hill's Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, George reread the chapter on service as the ultimate success. Hill wrote, "No real success can come to any man unless he leaves the world a better place than he found it." The words resonated deeply. George realized that his true measure of achievement would not be patents granted or projects completed, but the lives he enriched through his knowledge. Inspired, George converted his garage into a makeshift classroom, whiteboards on sawhorses, spare circuit components in glass jars, folding chairs lined up in rows. He invited local high school students and novice hobbyists to join his Electronics for Everyone series, where he would demystify basic circuitry, robotics, and renewable energy concepts. The goal was simple: empower the next generation to see themselves as capable creators, not intimidated observers. On the first day, nervous faces trickled in, teenagers clutching smartphones but unsure how to open a soldering iron. George greeted each by name, sharing the story of his first homemade radio at age 12 and the joy of hearing a distant voice crackle through tin can speakers. His warmth and enthusiasm transformed the sterile garage into a realm of wonder. As he demonstrated how to connect a simple LED circuit, eyes lit up with surprise and pride at the tiny glow they had wrought. Hill taught that service amplifies our positive attitude, creating a ripple that extends far beyond the initial gesture. George witnessed this as students returned weekly, bringing friends, family members, even teachers curious to learn. They formed study groups, helping each other troubleshoot breadboard wiring and debug code. George's workshop became a hub of collaborative learning, where his expertise catalyzed a community's shared curiosity. One student, Rosa, arrived each session with meticulously annotated notebooks. She confided that before meeting George, she'd dismissed STEM fields as beyond her reach. Now, she dreamed of building solar-powered irrigation pumps for her rural hometown. George mentored her outside of class, guiding her through project design, grant writing, and prototype fabrication. When Rosa's project won a Regional Innovation Award, she credited George's belief in her, a testament to the power of service underpinned by positive mental attitude. As months unfolded, George expanded his service. He coordinated with the local library to host Tech Tuesdays, where community members of all ages could drop in for mini lessons, repairing old radios, repurposing broken appliances into art, and exploring microcontroller programming. His home became a beacon of possibility, proving that engineering skills could enrich not just professional pursuits, but everyday life. Hill emphasized that service is not begrudged charity, but the joy of giving, a mutual uplift of both giver and receiver. George found his own spirits soaring with each shared success. The elderly retiree who built a weather station to monitor his backyard garden, the unemployed mechanic who gained newfound confidence soldering circuitry, the single mother who used 3D printing to create custom phone stands for additional income. Every workshop echoed with laughter, questions, and nascent aha moments that fueled George's soul more than any design review ever could. When his formal retirement day arrived, George closed his work email and packed his briefcase for the last time. Yet instead of stepping away, he stepped deeper into service. He established a rotating team of volunteer instructors among his former students and colleagues, ensuring that the Electronics for Everyone program would flourish beyond his own presence. He partnered with the local makerspace to sponsor scholarships, and he recorded video tutorials for online platforms, his teachings now accessible to anyone with an internet connection. At the program's 5th anniversary celebration, George stood before a vibrant crowd in the library's multipurpose room. Former students showcased autonomous robots, community members displayed home automation projects, and library staff unveiled a mural featuring gears and circuits that symbolized community-built technology. As the audience erupted in applause, George felt tears well in his eyes, not of sadness, but of profound fulfillment. His legacy was no longer confined to the buildings he'd helped electrify, but lived in the hands and hearts of everyone he'd guided. In his closing remarks, George quoted Hill's words, "To render service which brings lasting satisfaction, you must find joy in giving." He encouraged attendees to pass the torch of service onward, to mentor, to teach, and to believe in the limitless potential of others. When the crowd dispersed, dozens approached him to share how his workshops had altered their trajectories, some embarking on engineering degrees, others launching community initiatives, all driven by the spark he had helped ignite. That night, George returned to his quiet home, but he no longer felt alone. His garage still hummed with tools and components, ready for the next workshop. His heart swelled with the knowledge that a positive mental attitude, when channeled into sincere service, becomes an enduring gift, inscribed not on tongue or page, but in the lives it transforms. As the moon rose, George penned a final note in his journal. "True success is measured not by what I've built, but by what others build because I cared enough to guide them." And in those simple words lay the ultimate triumph of a lifetime, a legacy of service that would light countless paths for generations to come. Generations to come. Generations to come. Generations to come. Generations to come.